World of Warcraft has seen some very dark times. Content droughts, design fiascos, scandals, systems too complex for their own good, and radio silence as community engagement hits an all-time low. And now Final Fantasy XIV and other competitors are closing in. But I don't think this has to be the end of the story for World of Warcraft. What World of Warcraft needs is simpler systems, more content, better community engagement so that the dev teams know what will get players excited to pick up World of Warcraft again. To that end, I have invented a system of my own, a simple system that gives players huge amounts of customization, that lets developers add awesome and useful abilities without fear of spellbar bloat, giving players the ability to upgrade 3 of their spells to be something new. I'm cooking up concepts for 7 of these upgrade spells for every spec. Some of them are returning favorites, some of them are brand new. Either way, Blizzard has my express permission to use every concept I post about in these videos in the comments or on the forums. And if the Blizzard developers are too pressed for time to engage with the community, then I will. I'll get the feedback on this concept, and even if they don't take a single one of my ideas, they'll know what the players want, and most importantly, why. And they can use that to make the game better. Because I want this game better. I want WoW to last another decade. First of all, I'd like to start out by saying that the Holy Paladin is the spec that I have played since 2005. I've seen a decade and a half of class changes, I've seen it get more fun and less fun, and I'm aiming to make the spec as fun and functional as it was at its apex around Cataclysm or Mists of Pandaria. To that end, I've not just introduced the upgrade system in this proposal, I've also unpruned the Denounce spell, which is a ranged direct damage spell with no cooldown that I have sorely missed since it was pruned at the start of Legion. I know that Denounce had a debuff that prevented the target from critting, and honestly I don't care much one way or the other whether that debuff comes back. I just want my Holy Bolt back. Having played in expansions where I do have a ranged direct damage spell with no cooldown, and expansions where I don't, I can tell you, the ones with the ranged direct damage spell were much more fun. And if the devs want to make the fun factor a priority, and they darn well should, then unpruning Denounce is a terrific and easy win, especially if it gets used with the spellbook casting animation. That animation would just look so amazing with a projectile damage spell. Heck, if I had my way, Denounce would be available for Retribution and Protection too. It'd be a highly situational ability at most for them, but my philosophy is that every spec should have a ranged direct damage ability with no cooldown, so if they ever need it, they at least have it. For similar fun factor related reasons, I've also unpruned a group heal with no cooldown, Holy Radiance, and given it a new form that's intended to work with the mastery that we have had since Legion. It's channeled over 3 seconds and heals targets near us for the duration of the channel, and we can move while channeling it. In fact, we move faster while we're channeling it, and if we successfully complete the channel, we gain 2 holy power. There is no cooldown, but a pretty punishing mana cost. I'm toying with the idea of adding a damage component to this. If enemies are near us while we're channeling it, they take holy damage. Of course, that wouldn't be necessary if we had Consecration, but given Blizzard's track record of pruning abilities, it wouldn't surprise me if they'd take away Consecration with the idea in mind of making room for Denounce and or Holy Radiance, if they actually decided to unprune those abilities. For my money, the ability I wish they'd take away to make room is Light of the Martyr. I never use it. Holy Radiance, I would use. If they did take away Consecration, I'd want something that deals damage to multiple targets that has either no cooldown at all or a short cooldown. That is why I'm toying with the damage component idea. I have played 2 expansions with no decent baseline multi-target damage tools, and that was 2 expansions too many. Just ask Discipline Priests who played in Legion. Finally, Rebuke is once again back in Holy's kit in my proposal. I was pretty surprised they pruned it in Legion when they wanted to make Paladins feel as melee-ish as possible. Taking away a melee interrupt ability is the opposite of making us feel melee-ish. That's one of many prunings that I felt was a bad decision. I loved being able to interrupt enemies while I was soloing, and there were plenty of times during Torghast where being able to interrupt enemies would have made fights that were impossible for me as a Holy Paladin possible. Now, I have not added or unpruned 3 abilities to the kit of any other spec in this first iteration. I came close with Demon Hunters, where I gave them 2 new abilities because I felt like their design was too minimalistic. But no other spec in the game got 3. Unpruning is happening occasionally in the other kits, but for the most part, if I wanted to add an ability, I usually did so through the upgrade system. With that context in mind, I got to thinking. If I was a Blizzard employee who had the motivation of making the upgrade system look as appealing and exciting as possible to players, I strongly suspect I would choose to make Denounce an upgrade for Judgment instead of out-and-out unpruning Denounce, with the thinking being that A, Judgment is a range direct damage spell, thus upgrading it into a different kind of range direct damage spell makes a kind of sense. B, it gets the spell that players want onto the player's spell bar, which theoretically should be appealing and exciting, and C, getting that spell onto players' spell bars through the semi-borrowed power player power upgrade system makes that upgrade system look cool and appealing. But having played Holy since 2005, I know that it's better implementation to simply unprune Denounce rather than providing it to players via the upgrade system. But that whole spiel makes me wonder, am I often making the very mistake that I'm suspecting a Blizzard employee would make if they were in my shoes? I.e., providing solutions and quality of life improvements through my pet project player power system, when the real optimal solution is to unprune or out-and-out add new abilities? Am I being hypocritical when I use the upgrade system to add stuff? In the end, I want to do the optimal thing, the thing that would make the game the best that it can be, because the light, the void, and everything in between knows WoW needs all the help it can get. And it needs it now. In cases where unpruning or adding new abilities, or for that matter, where modifying existing abilities and passives is genuinely a better solution than using my semi-borrowed power upgrade system, I sure hope other players call me out on it. And that they have ideas about what to put in place of the abilities that I'm removing from the upgrade system in response to their feedback. With the discussion of the unpruned abilities and possible unintentional hypocrisy on my part out of the way, here's what I put in Holy's spread of upgrades in my first iteration. Number 1, Light Orb, an upgrade for Holy Radiance that projects a Holy Orb forward that damages enemies and heals allies that it passes through. It grants up to 2 holy power based on targets healed or damaged. It has a cooldown and is instant cast. Number 2, Word of Light, an upgrade for Word of Glory that is channeled and consumes 1 holy power every half second and ramps up its healing the longer it's channeled. It can be cast on enemies to deal damage as well as on allies to heal them. Number 3, Natural Light, an upgrade for Flash of Light that gains slightly more benefit from your mastery, but that counts as a Nature School spell. Number 4, Divine Shock, an upgrade for Holy Shock, where Holy Light and Flash of Light have a chance to cause your next Divine Shock not to incur its own cooldown. Number 5, Fist of the Heavens, an upgrade for Judgment that drops Holy Lightning on the target to deal light storm damage, and that sends Holy Sparks out to heal nearby allies. Number 6, Objection, an upgrade for Rebuke that is ranged and has a slightly shorter cooldown. Finally, number 7 is Holy Wrath, an upgrade for Denounce that hurls volleys of holy bolts to deal damage to multiple enemies. And now for the thinking. Light Orb was originally going to be an upgrade to Light of Dawn, but then I realized how Uther in Heroes of the Storm had a Holy Radiance spell as an ability that shoots out an orb of light that damages enemies and heals allies. Actually, I got to use that while playing as Uther during the Kyrian Memory Quest chain in 9.1, and it made me pretty sad that I don't have Holy Radiance on my spell bar. But anyhow, if I could upgrade Holy Radiance to mimic that Heroes of the Storm ability, it would look pretty cool and be downright iconic. The trade-off is more healing in a smaller area, and doing that healing less often thanks to the cooldown. Not to mention, it's instant cast and has no speed boost attached to it, but I think that's the kind of trade-off that should be in these upgrade spreads. Now, we've seen non-player characters channeling beams of holy energy. The Holy Paladin NPCs who help you get your Order Hall mount is one example, Olmir the Enlightened in Halls of Valor is another, healers in Nazjatar is yet another example. The list goes on. Why keep those snazzy animations out of players' hands? This is a channeled upgrade to Word of Glory. It can also be cast on enemies to deal damage over time because that's just plain fun. Fist of the Heavens is a classic Diablo spell. Why keep it out of WoW? It's got some healing potential with the sparks of light that it throws out, and it deals a kind of damage other than holy, lightstorm damage, which is a blend of holy and nature. I figure that Judgment, which is already a ranged damage spell with a cooldown, is prime for something like this. And I suppose Denounce would technically work, but if we did that, Fist of the Heavens damage and healing would have to be pretty minuscule for it to work. Judgment has a cooldown, and Denounce doesn't. I prefer upgrading my top damage ability with a cooldown so that Fist of the Heavens can be spectacular and more impactful. Divine Shock was meant to bring the old Daybreak passive back from Cataclysm. It provides a chance to get Holy Shock to not incur its own cooldown when we cast our regular heals. Plus, it's not Holy School per se. Divine is Arcane plus Holy. So if you get interrupted, you can still cast Divine Shock. Though, now that I think about it, this would mean that there'd be two different customization options that can mitigate the cooldown of Holy Shock. Crusader's Might and the Daybreak effect on Divine Shock. Is that too much? Or is the fact that they're kinda sorta mutually exclusive in that you can hard cast a heal or use Crusader Strike but can't do both at the same time, does that mean they're not overpowered together? I don't know. I need some feedback on this one. Objection is meant to provide some utility with Rebuke, which is unpruned for Holy once again in this version. I'm not sure if making the interrupt ranged was the best answer, though. I have in my back pocket a different upgrade that uses the kick animation and silences enemies on a successful interrupt. Actually, back during Cataclysm, Rebuke really did use the kick animation, which I actually thought was really cool and provided nice visual variety. If I'm told to switch out that kick ability Kaliga for Objection, then I will. Or to keep calling it Objection and make it a kick anyway, for that matter. We're all thinking of how hilarious it would be for a lawyer to shout, "Objection!" while kicking someone in a courtroom. Then again, maybe someone else has a better idea for what should be in this spread, and Objection is just plain old cannon fodder that I can switch for that better idea. I will find out once I've gotten feedback. Holy Wrath is an upgrade to Denounce, which is also unpruned again for the sake of the fun factor. At first I was going to have Hammer of the Crusader here since I loved how Hammer of Wrath looked in vanilla, while it just crackled in your hand before you threw it, and I'd hoped to add that to Holy's kit because of how cool that looked. I would have a stacking plus holy damage debuff like Crusader Strike did in World of Warcraft's beta in 2003, but then I realized there are plenty of spells that I have added as upgrades that are volleys of bolts. Those looked so cool when enemy NPCs were using those spells, so I just had to add them. But then I remembered how, in Mists of Pandaria, Holy Paladins almost got a volley of Holy Bolt spell themselves, and I realized that would be an even cooler upgrade for Denounce, so here it is, Holy Wrath. Hammer of the Crusader can wait for another expansion. Show me the Holy Bolt Volley! It would look amazing, especially with the spellbook casting animation, and adding abilities that look amazing is one of the main purposes of the upgrade system. Though now that I think about it, there's another upgrade for Retribution and Protection, the Sanctification ability that's also kind of a Holy Bolt Volley. So maybe this one's superfluous, but I sure like to think it isn't. Natural Light was me running a little low on ideas. It was meant to be a spell that breaks paladins out of the Holy School a little. It's almost identical to Flash of Light, except that it gains slightly more from your mastery, and it's Nature School instead of Holy School. Again, it's meant to make it very hard to interrupt a Paladin effectively, because if you interrupt the Holy Heal, they still have the Nature Heal. If you interrupt the Nature Heal, they still have the Holy Heal. Now, I don't know if that's overpowered or useless, but considering that PvP healers are rarely hard-casting anything, it's possible that no one else knows whether this is OP or not either. I guess we'll have to see, though considering how many silence on effective interrupt abilities I've added across all classes, this might be a moot point. There is another concept that I do not have listed as one of the 7 here. It's a concept that, in my opinion, is a step down from Unpruning Denounce, but still a step up from what we currently have. It's upgrading Holy Light into Holy Bolt, which can be cast on allies to heal or enemies to damage them, and it refunds its mana cost when you use it on enemies. That is nothing but a quality of life improvement, and believe me, one of the purposes of the upgrade system is to provide quality of life improvements. Of course, upgrades aren't the only way to provide quality of life improvements, and I still think Unpruning Denounce is a better way of providing that quality of life than using the upgrade system, which is why I unpruned it in my proposal. Now, if you're listening to me giving that spiel about quality of life coming from things other than upgrades, and then you see me providing quality of life improvements through the upgrade system to try to make my pet project idea look more awesome to the player, when quality of life could be much better served by unpruning or adding abilities, then please call me out on it. Blizzard's development team have done things like this in the past as well, and calling me out on it calls them out on it too. I am just as susceptible to the same biases as the World of Warcraft dev team is, and the only differences are that I don't work for Blizzard, and I have the humility to recognize that flaw in myself and do something about it. Though when you do call me out, I would appreciate it if you had something else I could put in the upgrade system in place of whatever it is you're having me take out of it. Which, of course, might be an upgrade to the variability that you're having me add or unprune. So please keep that in mind with your proposals. While editing this script, I realized I also had a spiel almost exactly like this earlier, but you know what? It is worth harping on twice, because I really don't want to be a hypocrite in the end. I want to do the thing that's best for the game, and if that means doing something outside my upgrade spread, so be it. Now, when I started out with these upgrade concepts, I went ability by ability, not purpose by purpose, if you see what I mean. I asked myself, which abilities exist in this specs kit that I can give an upgrade to? And when I created upgrades based on which abilities I could upgrade, I often aimed for something that I thought looked or sounded cool. Almost always I wanted the upgraded ability to feel at least a little bit different from the original. Often I tried to create some kind of trade-off, making the upgrade situationally useful based on things like the number of targets affected or having a stronger effect with a longer cooldown, things like that. Rarely did I upgrade the same ability more than once for the same spec, but while I was putting together each spread of upgrades, what I didn't do, and what I probably should have done in retrospect, was to figure out what goals a player would have while they're looking at a list of upgrades, and then make sure upgrades exist in the spread that allow the player to pick upgrades that help them achieve those goals. In my next iteration, I plan to have that design goal in mind, to consider what the player wants to accomplish and how they could accomplish it with the upgrades. I strongly suspect that in this next iteration, there will be a lot more cases where I upgrade the same ability in 2 or more different ways. That will give players more options, and since that's going to be the goal with goal-oriented design, who knows? I might even have 3 different upgrades for the same ability in the end. However, I can do this much more effectively in an environment that has a great deal of feedback available, and that's where you come in. You have knowledge that comes from experience with these specs. I don't. I tried to do my research on Wowhead and Icy Veins for each spec, but inevitably there'll be things you know that I don't because you have experience that I don't have. You'll have more and better ideas than I could hope to have, and I know I need those, so please, let me know what you think of these upgrades and what better ideas you have for what to put in their places. Looking at this first iteration of upgrades for Holy through the how can I use this for a goal lens, I think I did fairly well. Light Orb, Fist of the Heavens, and maybe Divine Shock would do well for multi-target healing, and Natural Light, Word of Light, and Divine Shock would again do well for single-target healing. Plus, some of these are just plain fun while soloing. Yes, I solo as Holy. Retribution and protection soloing simply don't appeal that much to me, but now that I think about it, for how many other healers did I add stuff that helps while they're soloing? I tried to add some damage or utility abilities for each healing spec, but did I succeed in making a good, fun spread of upgrades for the other healing specs while they're soloing? I sure hope so, or that if I didn't, then at least they got enough to buff their healing kits that it doesn't bother them. I've played Holy since 2005, but if you're seeing something that I'm not seeing, then please speak up. Now that I think about it, I just plain don't play the Glimmer and Crusader's Might build, and researching that didn't actually occur to me at all until just now, which might have been a crucial mistake in retrospect. It wouldn't surprise me if players start telling me how to modify the spread of upgrades to cater to the Glimmer and Crusader's Might builds, even though I've been playing as a hard-casting typical healer as Holy throughout Shadowlands and it's been working out fine for me. To be honest, I'm not sure what Blizzard's intention are, if any, about keeping the Glimmer and Crusader's Might builds around and keeping them viable in the long term. That's a very different style from other healing specs, which would probably be true anyway, considering that Holy Power got reintroduced. But it requires a kind of specific talent build to make it happen, and that makes it sound like it's a side build rather than a core part of the spec. And that means Blizzard may not be committed to keeping it in the game or to keeping it fun, functional, and viable. You remember what they did with Beacon of the Lightbringer after Legion. Blizzard doesn't seem to have that much respect for side builds, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean I can't respect them. If there's a way to have the upgrade spread help both Glimmer and Crusader Might builds and traditional hardcasting builds, I would prefer that, regardless of what faults this spread does or does not have from that perspective or from other perspectives. I am open to feedback. I plan to iterate on this concept. Just because I'm happy with this and I play a Holy Paladin doesn't mean all Holy Paladin players are going to be happy with it. Nor, for that matter, does it mean I didn't miss something important. Now that I'm thinking about how Glimmer Crusader's Might Paladins might look at this spread, Divine Shock, unless it actually does more healing, wouldn't really be all that appealing. Not unless I added Crusader Strike or Judgment to the list of abilities that can make it not incur its own cooldown. Heck, I should probably add Denounce to that list. That would be pretty cool. Light Orb would definitely be appealing since it's instant cast. Word of Light might be appealing if they were okay with doing something that isn't instant cast for a change. Of course, that "if" right there tells you how much I know about the Glimmer and Crusader's Might build. For that matter, Natural Light might be okay as a spot heal, again, if they're okay with doing something that isn't instant cast. On the other hand, Fist of Heavens is instant and provides some group healing, so maybe that would be appealing depending on the fight. But all those things that I just said are undereducated guesses. I need feedback from players to know how close or how far those guesses are from the truth. I've probably made a total fool of myself just by saying all of this. There's a big aspect of my own spec that I don't know about. Maybe that's why Blizzard is so tight-lipped and communicates so infrequently. They know that what they say is going to make them look like a fool to someone. And whoever that someone is, they're probably going to rise to the top of the conversation. And Blizzard would prefer not to have to deal with that. Heck, I'd prefer not to have to deal with that. But the reality is, few, if any, single human beings know everything there is to know about all the specs in the game. And if there are any, I'm certainly not one of them. Not yet, in any case. I might have to become one of them in the long term to do Project Decade. And let's face it, someone has to do this. Someone has to collect the feedback and show Blizzard what can get players excited to get back into WoW. So I'm sticking my neck out. I'm taking chances, making mistakes, and getting messy. I'm admitting that there's plenty I don't know, and I'm asking players to set me on the right track in the many and inevitable cases where I'm on the wrong track. So please, keep the feedback coming. Fill in the gaps in my knowledge that I don't even know exist, because I know there have to be some such gaps, but I don't know where they are, and someone listening to this will know. But before I close out, I want to share another fun fact with you guys. The first time I came up with a replacement upgrade concept, it was actually as part of a different player power system. Again, it had a lot of artifact weapon flavor to it, but it was originally a trick for getting a ranged direct damage spell with no cooldown back on my spell bar. I started with upgrading Holy Light to Holy Bolt to kind of give the developers a trick that would allow them to get me a ranged damage spell with no cooldown without spell bar bloat becoming a problem. And, well, it snowballed from there. Again, I think unpruning denounce is a much better way of handling that particular quality of life improvement. But it's honestly funny that the concept that started all this is only here as a footnote in the end, and not even as a desired thing to have as part of the new player power system. I guess that's sometimes just how it goes with game design, whether you're dreaming things up as a player or building things as a developer. Of course, I know Blizzard probably won't take many, or even any of these suggestions. Heck, they might even have something objectively better in store for us than the semi-borrowed power upgrade system that I've cooked up here. But knowing what gets players excited will be helpful to them even so. That is why I'm sacrificing so much of my free time and energy on Project Decade. And who knows, they might just need these ideas to get WoW going in the right direction. Heck, if this video series just gets the Blizzard developers into the habit of creating a blue post with the thinking in it that goes in depth enough for us to understand what they're doing and what their design goals are, then that would be a huge step forward. Even saying the thinking out loud is sometimes enough to get you a new perspective on what you're doing. Is it really what people want? Does it serve the purposes that it really should be serving in the end? Am I really doing something just to make a system look awesome instead of making the game overall better? What does it do for the fun factor? Am I making the mistake of prioritizing my design goals over the fun factor? Are my design goals the right design goals to have? Do my ideas match the spec's feel and flavor? Is it a net gain? Is it genuinely awesome? Things like that. Plus, we just plain need more communication from Blizzard. If Project Decade gets the development team into the habit of telling us the thinking for every change they make, then the whole project will have been worth it, even if they don't take a single suggestion. Again, if you see something you don't like bad trade-offs or something you know is counterproductive or useless, or if you've thought of an idea that's better or cooler or more useful than mine, then don't hesitate to let me know. The more details you can provide about why you don't like it and what makes one of my ideas counterproductive or useless, or about why your idea is cooler or more useful than mine, the better. One of the main goals of Project Decade is to give whoever's in charge of class design and player power systems a good idea what appeals to players and what will actually get them excited to get back to WoW again. And the more you can say about the wherefore and the why, the better. I fully intend to iterate on this project and make changes in response to feedback. I know I'm going to make mistakes. Heck, I've already seen mistakes in some of the things that I've done. But if those mistakes generate the kind of discussion that Blizzard needs to hear, so much the better. Blizzard needs to see player engagement, humility, and feedback actually making change and action so they can start doing what needs to be done to turn WoW around. It can be done and it should be done. World of Warcraft can last another decade. So keep the feedback coming, folks. There's one last thing. I began working on Project Decade videos back in July, and considering how many months it has taken, the fact that there are 36 different sets of feedback to curate and compile, and multitudes of decisions to make based on feedback received, ideas others have come up with, and how to weave everything together into a fun, functional, and exciting whole, I don't have a chance in the tramaculum of getting this done in any reasonable length of time unless I get volunteers to help me curate and compile the feedback I'm getting. If you're willing to help curate feedback, please let me know. If I get enough interest, I will set up a Discord server where we can coordinate everything. Thank you in advance for your feedback and support. Let's make World of Warcraft the best game that it can be.